Republicans and Democrats have promised us the world. Medicare for all, no child left behind, equity, safer streets, and police reform, an end to the housing crisis, a more peaceful world, and a sound economy. Government is the barrier to all of these things. If you're sick of the lies, fancy slogans, and broken promises, then join us in the Libertarian Party and help bring a real free market to the U.S. and help set every individual free. LP.org. That's LP.org. Hello, and welcome back to the Liberty Blues Network. I'm Sean Osborne. Thanks for listening to the show. If you like what you hear today, please subscribe to the show, share it with your friends, leave a rating and a review and comments and all that good stuff. So today from South Carolina, Josh Parks is joining us. He's running for the State House there in South Carolina. How's it going?
Hey, good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So how's the campaign going so far? We're coming up pretty close to the election.
Yeah, so we've it's going really well. I was already nominated by the South Carolina Libertarian Party to represent them in District 75 in that election. So I'm going to be on the ballot in November. I'm excited about that. I've got a lot of support, and I've been really pleasantly surprised. You put yourself out there, and it's a little scary. The first time, I think, especially to run for office and go, how will people respond? I'll be honest, I kind of half expected friends, family, and acquaintances to go, well, that's cute, that you're doing that, and instead I got a real resounding yes, thank you, and I was a little bit surprised, pleasantly surprised, and really grateful. The outpouring of support has been great so far. We're still getting the campaign off the ground. I've got a little bit of time. Next month is the Republican and Democratic primaries, and then my two opponents. It'll be clear who all is going to be on the ballot at that point. But right now it's going really well.
Nice. And so, since you already got the Libertarian nomination, you're automatically on the ballot for November. Then, right? You said.
Yes. Correct. Yeah. And South Carolina has a pretty good position when it comes to ballot access. Right now, there are some current threats to that we're worried about. But right now, we have ballot access. We just have to nominate who we want to nominate. And we do that through a convention rather than a primary. And we had our convention a few weeks ago. And so I was unanimously selected by our state convention to represent the party. So
Nice.
Proud of that and grateful.
Yeah, that's cool. It's great that you can actually be on the ballot. Here in California, unfortunately, we have the top two. So, sometimes we'll get Democrat versus Democrat, which, obviously is no choice at all.
Nope. No, it's not fair. It doesn't give people a real choice on the ballot. That's yeah. I know it's awful.
Shit, even Republican and Democrat doesn't give you a hell of a lot of choices in a lot of cases.
Right. Yeah. Well, we're fighting that battle here right now too. There's a lot of legislation right now, something like 3,000 bills in the South Carolina State House and Senate right now that are being have very varying levels of support and potential to pass. But a lot of them are focused on election reform, and by election reform, I mean circling the wagons and protecting the incumbents. That seems to be the theme of a lot of the legislative priorities right now. So people trying to keep their jobs and do whatever they can to keep other people like me off the ballot or to hurt our chances at election time. So
yeah, protect that status quo. Yeah.
What was that?
Protecting that status quo.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's unfortunate more people don't realize if you vote for more of the same, that's exactly what you're going to get. And, if people hadn't noticed, we're in a bit of a downward spiral here, if not a nosedive.
Yeah. And it's going to be hard to vote our way out of it at all. But it's definitely not going to happen if we keep electing the same people. That's right.
Yeah. What got you fired up to run for this office in particular?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I'm the chair of my county Libertarian Party, county chapter. So and part of my and I'm the membership chair for South Carolina Libertarian Party. And so I've been looking for people to run for office. I've been begging people to run in their district and trying to find those people. And there was nobody set to run in my district. And I realized I got to put my money where my mouth is. If I'm going to encourage other people to run, I got to be willing to put my name on the ballot. And so it kind of just started that way. I'll throw my name out there. I'll put my name on the ballot. But like I said, the outpouring of support kind of transformed it into a real campaign.
Mhm.
When I realized that there were a lot of people who were just dying for another option, who had just found themselves for years voting the lesser of two evils, whatever that means. And we're saying, please give us another choice, give us another option. And I think my message of restoring trust has been has really resonated with people. And so my whole point is I mean, of all people, public leaders, publicly elected officials should be trustworthy. And we should be electing people, whether you think that they have all the same ideals as you and ideologies as you, we should be electing people who at least have good character.
Mhm.
And so I'm not saying I'm a perfect person, but what I can tell you is I don't have my hands in the cookie jar. I'm not torn in terms of my loyalties in South Carolina. My loyalty would be only to my district and to the people in my district. And I'm not doing this for any kind of personal gain and don't have any intentions to do that in the future. This is really just about being a public servant. So that's what I think drove me to run was going, I'm dying for somebody who just has good character to run for office. Maybe I could be an example and show people what that looks like. And for better or worse, there could be
Yeah.
better examples, but I'll certainly give it a shot.
That's that's so true. Libertarians, we really, I mean, we get accused of a lot of things like being, all we want is corporations and this and that. But libertarians, we don't get paid for what we do. Unlike Democrats and Republicans, they got paid staffers. Everything we do for free. We do it
Yeah,
because we really believe in what we're talking about, and we're willing to take our time and our money and and our reputation. To put it out there to run for office, to get another voice heard because, polls over the last, I don't know, 10 or so years have said 70% of Americans want more options. And, that's
absolutely.
just a fact. And, you're that option.
And I think that's my biggest selling point when it comes to my particular race and my candidacy is I don't have a machine behind me. I have the South Carolina Libertarian Party. I love it. It's very near and dear to my heart. We have zero elected officials in South Carolina from our party,
Mm.
at least at a high level. I mean, maybe a school board or something like that. But we don't have a machine there. If I got elected to this position, and when I get elected, there I will be the only person in the South Carolina Libertarian Party in office. Probably, I mean, if we have 11 candidates, and I hope every one of them gets elected. But
Mm.
my point is, we don't have this big machine. I will be beholden to no one other than my constituents. There's not a big corporate machine behind me. There's not a big political machine behind me. So when you vote for me, you know what you're getting. You're getting somebody who actually just cares about South Carolina and wants to see it flourish. And that's it. Yeah.
What obviously, I mean, if you're going for the state house, I don't know much of the issues going on in South Carolina. Like what do you think voters are concerned about that you can do on a state level as opposed to like the US House, where you could, be against, going to war in Iran and these kind of things. What could you do in the state house?
Yeah, obviously foreign policy isn't a big issue at the state level, but it's a lot of the same things that you'll hear at the federal level, and I'm sure, Sean, it's a lot of the same things you're hearing in California. It's things like affordability, education. Those are huge priorities for people right now, and they want accountability and responsibility from their elected officials. So transforming the state house would be one of my top priorities. Hold politicians accountable, create transparency and accountability at the state level. Those would be my top priorities.
Mhm.
And if you pull, and it's actually, I don't have to even do the work and polling people and figuring out what they want because there's a lot of other organizations that have done that exact work, asking people, what do you want? What are your biggest priorities? It may not be the biggest priorities for their legislators, but it is the priorities of the people. And one of those organizations, I just spoke to the director recently. Phenomenal. I highly recommend the viewers go check it out. Even if you don't live in South Carolina, you need to see what this looks like because your state needs this. It's called SC Forum. The website is scforum.org. SC is in South Carolina, and they are crowdsourcing legislation by finding out what matters to people and then getting those people, regardless, it's nonpartisan, getting people to across the aisle to work together and say, here's what's important to us, and here is not just the issue, the problem, but here's a potential solution, and getting legislation written and putting it in front of legislators. And when you look at their website, you can click on the Insights tab, and it'll show you what people, what's important to them. And it's things like I just said, it's transparency, it's accountability, it's education, it's affordability. It's the same stuff that everybody's talking about across the country, really. They want opportunities. They want, like I said, accountability from their legislative officials. That's number one for most people. And so those would be my priorities too. There's no reason for me to pursue anything other than what my constituents want. I don't have I'm not coming in with a legislative agenda that's the Josh Parks legislative agenda. What my legislative agenda would be, what do the people of South Carolina want? What could help them flourish? That would be it. I don't have friends in high places that I need to protect. I don't have any agenda for that of my own other than what's good for the people. And I think that that's honestly how every politician should go about it. But that was my that's my pitch, if you will.
I like it. I like it.
Yeah.
And you had mentioned education. I think you had said that your wife's a school teacher.
hmm
So, what kind of problems do you see in the South Carolina educational system that you would like to have fixed? Because I know out here in California we got our whole list of issues like indoctrination. It's more of an indoctrination factory into the progressive lifestyle as opposed to critical thinking and such.
Yeah. And the indoctrination thing may be a concern in South Carolina. It's not the number one concern of most people. My kids go to public school. I feel I serve on the school improvement council for my kids' elementary school. I love their teachers. They do a really good job. My wife is a wonderful teacher. She's been teacher of the year. She's worked at her school for 20 years. She's phenomenal at what she does. I love teachers. I love public school teachers. But one thing that could really help children in South Carolina is school choice. Parents should be able to, there are schools that are underperforming, and being locked into those schools is a real hindrance to education. And the needs of individual families shouldn't be limited by where they live. If there's a school, for instance, there's another school in town that has different educational programs, the language programs, language immersion, and things like that. And we have pockets of school choice in South Carolina, like within certain districts, for instance, parents can determine they can ask or request to be if their kids can go to a different school and things like that. But what we need is universal school choice in South Carolina, where parents can pick and choose, and then the dollars should follow the children wherever they go. If we're giving money, shouldn't be given to schools. The money should be given to follow the children where they go, and then the best schools will rise to the top, and they'll continue. They'll get more funding, and we'll be funding success rather than failure. I think that is a huge priority for. It's not just me. There's other legislators, but that would be one of my best options for helping South Carolina schools continue to grow and flourish. They're on the up, and they're doing better in a lot of cases, test scores and things like that. But in some ways, I wonder if that's just because other states are not doing as well. I want to see South Carolina really grow and perform better. And I have a vested interest in that. Like I said, school teacher wife, three kids in public school. I'm more invested in that than my opponents, I promise.
Yeah. Indiana has that. That's my home state. Indiana has that thing where, the tax dollars go follow the parents or the students, so the
The
parents
students.
can apply it. They can even apply that tax money that would go to whatever to a private school or to homeschooling. Obviously the private school, they probably have to pay the difference, but that makes it a much more affordable way for
Hmm.
people to get that kind of choice. And I totally agree with that because a lot of these problems we have in the country are because people want to control another group of people. They're in that group think, whether you're a conservative and you want to post the 10 commandments in school, or if you're a progressive and you want to talk about group think and different people's rights against other people's rights and stuff like that. um,
Hmm.
I think everybody ought to have the ability to have their children taught the way that they want. If you're a conservative or a Christian, nothing wrong with having a Christian kind of education. Or if you're an atheist or a liberal, you should be able to have that kind of education if that's what you want. And let the chips fall where they do after that. When those schools see how they perform and how their students perform.
Yeah, absolutely. I believe families should have that choice. And it doesn't make sense for them not to. The only reason why you'd be against that is if, again, you're protecting certain budgets, and you're worried about, your particular school or your particular district's budget. And my answer to that is if they're doing a good job, then they will see an increase in their budget. More kids will want to come there. More parents will want to send their kids there, and you'll see an increase, and you'll probably hold on to the best teachers and continue to pay them well. I think that's what competition does in the marketplace, and there's no reason it wouldn't work in schools. And in fact, is working in other states. We're seeing that happening right now. So we don't even have to be pioneers in this. Other states have already done it, and it's working well for them. So South Carolina should follow in their footsteps.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's good. I'm a music educator myself, so I like to see good opportunities for kids to learn and grow up to be able to grow up to be successful adults.
Mm,
And good education. That's really the route to it.
sure.
Not schooling, being educated.
That's right. That's right. It's a good distinction.
Yeah. So there's something else. I'm not sure if it. I want to think. I don't know if this is one of the issues you talk about, but I think South Carolina, is that a certificate of need state? Do you know?
It is. It is. Yeah. And it's on my list of legislative priorities. There's certificate of need, reduces competition. And we have a much bigger need for regulatory reform in South Carolina that extends beyond certificate of need, but that's a great place to start. It's certificate of need reduces options and it creates barriers of entry to medical facilities in a time when healthcare costs are just skyrocketing.
Mhm.
And the last thing that we need to do is reduce competition. We need more competition in healthcare, and it will force companies to innovate. I've heard it actually, them say it out loud. Well, if a new facility opens up next to us, then that's going to we're going to have to invest in our facilities more. We're going to have to hire better people. We're going to have to become a better company to compete. And and that's no joke. And that's what they're saying. They
Okay.
go, yeah, you should do those things. You need to be doing those things. You need to find efficiencies and reduce overhead and costs to drive down healthcare costs. And you need to be more competitive by lowering the costs for your patients. And so, certificate of need is just a horrible way of driving out competition, keeping out competition. And yes, in South Carolina, it's a problem and it needs to go away.
That's such a trip. I wonder how many people don't even realize that that's a thing. Because I remember, I remember when I first heard about it, I thought it was about the most egregious thing I'd ever heard of.
Yeah, yeah, it's up there with civil asset forfeiture in terms
Yeah.
of its absurdity. When you hear about it, you're like, well, that can't be right. There's no way that's allowed to happen. Yeah, it is, and it does. Yeah.
Yeah, could you imagine like Burger King not being able to open up a restaurant because McDonald's said they don't? there's no need for another restaurant.
We already have a fast food restaurant on this block.
Yeah.
We don't need another one. And you have to prove that we need another one before you're allowed to open. That doesn't, no, of course not. You compete on the quality of your product and your service,
Uh-huh.
and your prices.
Uh-huh.
Reducing the competition drives up prices. And that's the last thing we need right now in healthcare.
Yeah. Yeah, supply and demand's a real thing, man. If you cut down the supply, then price is going to go up.
Yeah. Yeah. And if
Yeah.
they don't think they're going to compete, they're not going to waste the money to open a new facility or near you. So if they really don't believe the need is there, they wouldn't put a facility there in the first place. If the only, I mean, people don't want to throw away their money. Investors don't want to toss away dollars. So we already have what certificate of need claims to do in the marketplace. It's built into the system.
Mhm.
Competition is part of the free market, and it works, and it has worked for thousands of years. We don't need to reinvent that, call it certificate of need. The marketplace provides that already.
Yeah. Speaking of government nonsense, how is it with like say the like for small businesses and stuff to do business there?
South Carolina is better than some states, but it has a long way to grow. And one of the biggest issues is regulations. We have, as I mentioned, certificate of need is a bigger part of a regulatory issue in South Carolina, where our legislators have become addicted to passing new regulations that oftentimes just put their thumb on the scales. For their friends' businesses. Maybe that's a very cynical way to put it, but that seems to be what's happening is these new regulations get passed seem to really help some businesses and hurt other ones, coincidentally. And it's very rarely their friends' businesses that get hurt. And so regulations in South Carolina, a lot of them are very onerous and really can go away. I mean, there's so many. I'll give you one example. A cosmetologist or barber in South Carolina requires 3 to 4 times as much training to become a cosmetologist by state law than it does to become a police officer.
That's why.
Um,
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that licensing and stuff for people like that who
yeah.
like say you got to get a license to braid people's hair and stuff.
Yeah. Licensing is a big issue. In the, and there's so many regulations that we could do away with or really reduce the scope of them. It's a big, and the problem with regulations is, they may be created to solve a problem in the short term. But once they're there, they're always there. And, that problem may have gone away a long time ago, but here we are 20 years later, and we've added 17 regulations on top of that one. And it just creates an environment that it's hard to start up new businesses, and it's hard for existing small businesses to thrive in that environment. Larger businesses have the internal infrastructure to be able to deal with the millions of regulations. They can afford to do that. They can hire people, and that's their job to focus on that. Smaller businesses struggle in that environment, and that's where we need to be pushing because small businesses not only are the number one employer in every state. After, depending on the state, after the government or whatever, but the small businesses are the lifeblood of our economy. And so reducing regulation, rising tide lifts all boats. It would increase wages, increase competition, drive down prices. It would benefit consumers and employees and employers for that matter. So it really only benefits the government, high regulatory environment, and even then, it's just, there are not a lot of benefits besides maybe the fees and taxes and stuff that are incurred. And as you know, I don't believe those are much of a benefit at all. So
Yeah, yeah. It's to me, as a libertarian, I hear, when I talk about getting rid of regulations, people start to freak out and say, "Oh, you want poison air and stuff." So no, no, I breathe the same air as you. I just don't think regulations. I think regulations is a word, but I don't think they regulate anything. I think it's nothing really but loopholes for the cronies, and the corporations. As libertarians, a lot of times we're defamed as being all pro corporatist. We're just not anti corporate. We're more pro entrepreneur and small business than anything, I would think.
Yeah, absolutely.
and
And,
regulate
and one
loophole.
thing that's really nefarious in South Carolina about the regulatory environment is that they seem to apply, to businesses that are struggling, but then South Carolina will say incentivize some corporation to put their new plant or something like that, and then they'll cut them all kinds of loopholes in the tax code and give them all kinds of tax incentives to move their plant there for very little benefit. The land that gets sold for the corporation, well, that'll certainly, that sale will certainly benefit somebody. And it's probably, that legislator's buddy or something like that. But but the South Carolina doesn't benefit in any way from these giving these giant corporations all these loopholes. It just creates an anti-competitive environment for the local businesses and things like that who already struggling to find people to hire and already struggling against the Amazons of the world, and now you're bringing in new competition and giving them so many advantages over the local businesses that has been there for 50 years or 100 years. So
I know.
it's it's a problem for sure in South Carolina.
I know a place at my home state, Indiana. They have issues with, like, say, they'll have a company come in and they say, oh, they're gonna create all these jobs, but the jobs end up going to people from out of state who move into the area because it's a specialized kind of thing,
Yep.
or they do something where they bring in something, they develop an area, and that causes everybody's property taxes to go up. Because they're still taxing people, on what is it, non on what they own, the value of, I just lost.
Property taxes.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
so the price of their house goes up. You're a retired person, the price of your house goes up because the government decided to do some manufacturing of what they want and to
Hmm.
society to look like, and it raises your property values and really prices you out of your own home at that point. Is that
Yeah,
is that
yeah.
an issue down there as well?
It is. I mean, there's the housing issue extends beyond that, but it definitely includes that. So, just to give you a real life example of what you're talking about, our state brought in Scout Motors. I don't know if you're familiar with the old SUV Scouts, the Scout Internationals. They were really kind of a cool cult SUV back in the day. Well, Volkswagen bought the intellectual property rights or whatever to Scout and is designed and is supposedly going to produce a new electric version of it. So bring back the Scout, but make it an electric SUV. It kind of looks like a Rivian or something like that. And South Carolina competed and was able to get that Scout Motors plant put in Blythewood, South Carolina, which is right outside the capital city. And on the promise it's going to bring all these jobs. Well, it's been super disruptive. The facility and the land is, I mean, just a massive infrastructure project there that involves the interstate and all sorts of stuff. And as every step of the way, this deal has gotten worse and worse and worse for South Carolinians, where it sounded pretty cool on paper at first, and then it's just been smoke and mirrors the whole way. And now, I mean, one of the most recent revelations was, oh yeah, we're building the plant in South Carolina, but we decided to put the headquarters over the state line in North Carolina. So all the high-paying jobs are actually going to Charlotte. North Carolina, just up the road, and so it's only going to be the kind of the frontline jobs that go to South Carolina, which is just a huge slap in the face of South Carolina after this deal had, progressively gotten worse for South Carolina along the way. And so, all these incentives, and we're not going to have very much to show for it. And now there's a lot of concerns that, this SUV is never even going to be made in the first place. It's that this whole thing has maybe been a con or, some kind of corporate write-off or whatever. So anyway, we'll see how that plays out, but it's just been a case study in how these the government putting its thumb on scales hurts businesses, hurts families. It's property values are going to skyrocket, in Blythewood, and that may be good for some people, but it's good. It's destroying what was a little town, a beautiful little town. It's already people are moving out and saying they're out. I mean, I've talked to multiple people who said, yeah, we're looking for a place further out of town or something because Blythewood's about to become just insanity. You
Does the
know, it's and your point about housing prices. I mean, there's a lot of, like I said, a lot of issues there. It's not just that, but yeah, housing is a big issue in South Carolina right now. And so the best thing the government can do right now is just get out of the way, get out of the way of the housing market, reduce regulations and any kind of onerous policies that make it hard to buy houses or to build houses and make it cheaper to build houses just by getting out of the way. We don't need subsidies. We don't need new programs to incentivize homeowners. We don't need all that stuff from the government. We just need the government to get out of the way.
the in here in Los Angeles, that guy Spencer Pratt's running for mayor.
Mm,
That's really what's got him so much publicity, is because the Democrats here have just they've dropped the ball completely. They admit the regulations are a problem and they won't do anything about it. And he's talking about, his house burned down during the fires, and he's talking about what kind of nonsense people have to go through to get building done here in California. And he's
I can
pointing
only imagine.
copper theft and everything and all that stuff. And why they all sit there and act like, oh, if we just tax you a little bit more, it'll all be good.
Yeah, yeah. I can only imagine and how it is in California. It's tough. The housing market's tough here, but in LA,
Yeah.
it's got to be insane.
Or even this, we actually, our property tax thing here, because the voters voted to freeze the property tax, like on your house, at where you bought it. And people voted for that in the early 90s. So technically our property tax value, it doesn't change. Like my property has tripled in price since I moved into it. Hadn't affected my tax stuff. So I've been trolling my conservative friends in Indiana, saying, you guys, they had an opportunity to vote for Donald Rainwater, who had a great tax plan for the property tax, and people still voted for Republicans, and now people are being priced out of their houses because of the taxes have gone up so much. And I troll them saying, progressive California is taxing you less than your conservative Republicans you voted for.
Yeah, that's sad. It's sad to say it, but that is almost certainly true in South Carolina, Sean. I mean, our property taxes, there is no cap on it, and mine go up every year as my house gets reassessed. And what's really egregious about that, I mean, property taxes in themselves are egregious in the sense that you're taxing me on something that I've already paid for and own. I think it's just a very immoral tax, property taxes. But in general, it's the government saying, actually, we own what you say you own, and you're going to continue to pay for it every year. But if I pay, if I make an investment, buy a stock. I don't have to pay taxes on it until I sell it. I
Yeah,
don't have to pay taxes to own that stock every year. Doesn't make sense for people to do that until they've sold the stock and you see how much profit they make, and then you tax the profit. Okay, fine. Not I, you know, I don't, I'm not a fan of any tax, but that
right.
tax actually makes a little sense because you're taxing the profits. But my house, I don't make any profit on it until I sell it, and indeed may make no profit on it. But in the meantime, I've paid property taxes on it every year. And in Sean, in South Carolina, it's even worse. We have property taxes on our vehicles, and I just paid $1,200. I paid $1,200 on my SUV in property taxes for the year, which is several. I mean, that's 2 months worth of like two extra payments every year that I'm making just on in taxes. So it's yeah, our tax, and we have taxes on boats too.
That's
So yeah, property taxes that we have to pay annually on boats. And so it's pretty bad. And one thing that's actually a little bit encouraging is there is a big push right now in South Carolina to we also have income tax. So we pay all the taxes. We pay property tax, we pay income tax, we pay sales tax. But there's a push right now to end income tax in South Carolina that actually has some legs behind it. And if I get elected, I will vote for that to end income taxes in South Carolina,
Hell
and
yeah.
make it a more competitive state for high wage earners. That's my one of my top legislative priorities would be ending income taxes because I think there's some actual legitimate support behind that right now.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Unrealized income was what I was trying to think of earlier. Just the fact that
Oh, yes, unrealized.
the fact that they tax you, like you said, on your house that you bought and paid for, and you're basically paying rent, you know, that doesn't have a cap on it. Like a lot of places have rent control and stuff like that. They don't have any controls on this stuff. Just they're gonna the parasite's got to feed, and you're the host. For this parasitic government to take from you when you've already you know done what you needed to do to have a house, or to you make an investment in things. That was one of the things Kamala Harris wanted to do. She wanted to tax, like progressives, they want to tax the billionaires because somebody has a lot of stock, so they feel that they ought to pay for that. When the stocks are just sitting there, that could crash tomorrow too, and they could lose it.
Hmm.
That everything's a risk in that sense. But government, man, these progressives, and I mean now even the Republicans, man, they want to tax you on everything. It's like you're taxed from the left and the right.
Yeah. Yeah, tax you, and then of all the egregious taxes, then they tax you when you die.
Yeah,
It's absurd. There's just no way to avoid these taxes. And like I said, in South Carolina, unfortunately, we have all of them. And it's unfortunate, but I'd love to see some of those at least go away. And fortunately, right now, income tax might be the one where there's enough support behind ending it, which would save a lot of families, thousands of dollars a year, in income taxes, which would be great.
mhm. And so you have some political history because you worked with Strom Thurmond as what'd you do?
I interned in Washington for Strom Thurmond, which was a wild experience, as you could imagine.
Yeah,
Probably this was
yes.
maybe a year before he died, maybe 2 years before he died. In Washington, it was 2002, and yeah, wild experience. My mom was kind of pushing me into politics, and or at least to consider politics. She wasn't telling me I needed to go into politics, but she encouraged me to apply for the internship. And I applied thinking there's no way I'm going to get this internship. And I did. So I went to DC. This was right after 9/11. DC was a little crazy
It
uh,
was.
then, and it was changing very quickly, changing the environment in DC. And yeah, but I will tell you this, it was a pretty incredible experience. I had the cushiest internship of any intern in Washington, D.C. Strom had been around. He really believed in giving interns just the best experience he could, not in using them as, unpaid labor or whatever. And so we had the cushies. I mean, I met other interns in DC at the time, and I was like, "Well, what did you do today?" And they'd be like, "Well, I licked envelopes all day. That's what I did." And I was like, "Oh, cool. We went and met with FBI agents today, and tomorrow, we're going to a game in Baltimore, and then down to Quantico to rappel off a tower and ride in a helicopter. That was the kind of stuff that we got to do, and we got to meet a lot of politicians. And so I met Lindsey Graham. That when I was in DC, that was the first time he was new back then. It was the junior senator from South Carolina, brand new. Yeah, and so even then I had a bad feeling about him, and I was very right to have that feeling. And then yeah, it met tons of people. In a lot of ways, it was a great experience. I'll be honest, Strom Thurmond was uh, I'll just say it, not from the modern era.
Yeah,
And it's maybe the nicest way that I can say it. So I was very careful to keep my female fellow interns out of the elevator with him because he
really.
was in a wheelchair at the time. But yeah, he liked to pinch some girls' behinds. I'll just put it that way. And so it's just he's from a totally different era, and it was a little, it was a wild experience. That's not a secret at all, by the way. That's not a that was a very he was very well known for that. So yeah, it was a cool experience. But I did leave Washington with a honestly going, I'm never going into politics. This is not the world for me. It's kind of sleazy and dirty, and I just don't want to have anything to do with it. And it was years. I mean, I was introduced to Ron Paul in 2007. And that was, I'll tell you that about that experience if you don't mind, real quick. That
Oh, I'd love to hear about it. I
I
love rock.
I went to see it was so this is 2007, the primaries, Republican primary for the president, and this is the election, when Obama got elected and beat McCain. And so they hadn't yet chosen a Republican, and so Dr. Paul, I went to an event in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. He was it was a debate between all these Republicans who were in the primary, and I mean, he just wiped the floor with all of them. I mean, it was so impressive. I was so impressed with him. And I walked in that night as a Republican and left as a Libertarian. And that was I know the exact date. People go, when did you become a Libertarian? I was like, I don't know, it happened. I know the exact date that I became a Libertarian. It was the date of that primary debate.
Right.
And I left. I was already a fan of him, but it's more as a Republican. But I left going, okay, I guess I'm a non-interventionist. I guess for ending the Fed. Like all these new ideas that it really solidified in my brain what in my mind is true conservatism,
Mhm.
which is being fiscally conservative, being non-interventionist, and so being conservative with our military and our military resources. And so in my mind, all like what I thought of as conservative, he even said that night on the stage, I'll never forget it. They asked him, it was so crazy. They would go around to each of the candidates and ask these substantive questions, like, what about education or what about foreign policy or whatever. And they got to Dr. Paul at one point, and they would give him these terrible questions. And at one part, after asking all these substantive questions, they turned to Dr. Paul and they said, and I quote, Dr. Paul or Mr. Paul, whatever. Electability. Do you have any? That was their question of Ron Paul, and I was like, "What are you doing? This is so obviously rigged." It was Fox News was hosting the debate,
Mhm.
and I'll never forget. He said, "I'm the most conservative person on this stage." So you can, say that I'm not electable or something like that, but I am the most conservative person on the stage. And he started really laying out what conservatism was, and it changed my whole view of the government and who I was as a, that night a Republican. And I walked out of there going, I'm not a Republican anymore, especially at the way that they treated him in the debate,
Right.
how obviously rigged it was. And then afterwards, there was a vote immediately after where they polled the viewers on who won the debate, and he won handily. And they deleted the results, and then like suddenly came up with a new poll, and it showed I don't know, McCain or whoever winning, and it was just so terribly and obviously rigged that I walked away going, okay, I'm not a Republican anymore.
Yeah.
I can't stand for this. I am whatever Ron Paul is. That's what I am. And it was later that I kind of put a name on that and started calling myself a libertarian.
Yeah. Is that famous debate what's on YouTube with the Giuliani moment and everything?
There was a moment like that in the Myrtle Beach debate. That debate that you're talking about actually happened in my hometown in Columbia, and I wasn't there for that. I thought that it was the same debate for a long time, but it turns out it was a different debate, and but in a few months earlier,
Mhm.
also happened in South Carolina, but not the exact one. And so the support had really come behind Dr. Paul in the wake of the first debate. And the Myrtle Beach debate was the one where where I was really introduced to him. And I got dragged along by a friend who's like, "Hey, we got to go see Ron Paul." And I was like, "Okay, I'm in," you know. And that's was a really changed the course of not just my political ideology, but my whole life. It really, I mean, I don't, there's probably no one else other than Jesus who that I've never personally met face to face who's affected my life more than Ron Paul has.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, it was a very transformative. I say I've actually did shake his hand one time, but who I've never really had a conversation with, who had such an impact on me.
Yeah, I remember, I was already in the Libertarian Party at that point in time, or at least a registered Libertarian. I remember seeing those debates, and I was like, "Damn, what's he doing over there?" I was like, "I wish he was on our team over here," because I didn't know the whole history of,
Me
you know,
either. Yeah.
I didn't understand all that at the time. So I'm very glad that the Ron Paul revolutions come back to the Libertarian Party.
Well, and that's how I ended up in the Libertarian Party was a lot of it took for years after 2012. I mean, he ran again, as you know, and after that, I was kind of just politically homeless and disengaged. I just like there's no party that really represents me. I mean, I knew the Libertarian Party existed. I'll be honest, my vision of the Libertarian Party was a bunch of hippies. And I was like, I don't think that that's really my party. And it wasn't until COVID that I was introduced to the Libertarian Party by somebody who saw a comment that I'd posted on Facebook. It kind of got screenshotted and went viral about supporting free markets.
Mhm.
And he said, "Hey, you should consider joining the Libertarian Party." I was like, "I don't think that that's." And he said, "No, that a lot of the Ron Paul people believe in a lot of the same things as you have joined the Libertarian Party and have really supported that party." And that's when I started looking into the LP, and shortly after that became a member. And have gotten heavily involved ever since. I was a delegate to the last convention. And I was elected to the one before that. Wasn't able to go, but the DC convention and have been heavily involved in the South Carolina Libertarian Party ever since. So, and I want to shout out really quick SCLP. I love the party that I'm in. A lot of states, it's a grind to be in the Libertarian Party.
Yeah.
SCLP, it can be tough at times, but we have a lot of passionate people with diverse views, but we try to get along. There's not a lot of drama. We roll up our sleeves and work together. And so I'm really
Right.
proud of what we're doing and what we're building in South Carolina. And like I said, we've got 11 candidates on the ballot this November, and hope to have even more in 2 years. So.
Yeah, I wish more libertarians would realize that the other libertarians aren't really your enemy. It's the state.
Yes, yeah, and I think we do a good job of that. I mean, it's like I said, there's always different ideas about which direction to go and what to focus on, but we try to stay out of a lot of the drama, and especially at the national level of the party, and really just roll up our sleeves and do the work in South Carolina. And we've done a really good job of that, and I'm really proud of my whole party. Yeah.
Yeah, here in California, we got a bit of the drama, but we had an issue where certain people want to have like their version of liberty put into the platform or those kind of things. And I'm a believer that the platform should be about as minimal as possible, and just talk about individual liberties and let the candidates go out there and sell their version of liberty and get people on board with that. Because the party can't represent. I mean, we're individuals. It can't represent us all.
That's
Um,
right.
if it tries to get too minute in its descriptions of like say sex work or something like that, I believe it should be legal. But it's also not the hill I'm going to die on. I'm not.
Yeah, it doesn't need to be yes, we don't need to have a platform plank for sex work. I agree. I mean, I believe that. I know some people disagree. I don't, same thing with abortion.
Mhm.
These are issues that, I mean, we can talk about You own your body, absolutely. How that gets worked out and the details of that are up for debate in a lot of ways. And so we need to be okay with some of the generalities, and focus on what we have in common, which
Yep.
is is reducing the state. That's got
Yep.
to be our primary focus as a
Yep.
party.
Absolutely. Have you had any good press coverage over there or anything? Any write ups in any local papers or anything?
No, like I said, I've only been the candidate for a few weeks, so we're still working on that. I've also been waiting to get my website and social media pages off the ground before really pushing that. So I want to have a place to direct people. So this is actually, Sean, you're kind of my first real foray into media coverage. So I appreciate that.
Yeah.
And you reaching out to me. But yeah, no, not yet. But I did have at least one journalist say, "Hey, let me know when you're ready to go, and I'll do what I can." So I think we need one thing that we need to focus on is having a clear message going into November, particularly for the people like me who are running for state house in local office. What are we focused on in South Carolina? What do we need to be focused on? And so I'm excited to see what the media will do and run with. My primary focus in my campaign, as I mentioned earlier, is restoring trust to political office. As you know, institutional trust is at an all-time low for America. When you just look at all the institutions together, the numbers are abysmal. I think something like 4% of Americans have high trust in Congress. I think it's like 8% or 9% for the presidency. Um, the only institution that's actually increased in trust in the past 4 or 5 years, consistently every year, is that I can think of off the top of my head is the church, which is interesting. The religion is coming back a little bit in terms of trustworthiness, but most of our institutions, and including news media, social media, um, uh, public school systems, trust is just and banks, things like that have just been it's been abysmal. The numbers are so low, and so I want to the whole purpose of my candidacy is to say what do we need to do? I'm a business consultant, and when I meet a business owner who's so in the weeds and focused on running their business that they're not thinking about how they're leading or their own character development and things like that, then the advice that I consistently give business owners is you need to stop working in the business and start working on the business. You're so busy and focused on being in the business that you're losing sight of the bigger picture, which is uh, developing yourself, developing your strategy, your vision, those kinds of things. But the same thing is true for our politicians. We have politicians right now who are so focused on what bill am I trying to pass and how am I going to raise my campaign funds and all that kind of stuff. And they're not thinking about what the primary issue, they just aren't trustworthy. Nobody trusts them. They may continue to get elected, but they've lost public trust. Um, and so my vision for this candidacy, for this campaign, and for also that I hope spreads throughout South Carolina is this. What would it look like, and what do we need to do as candidates and as politicians to restore trust and start focusing on that? So, with my campaign, that means I want to run the most transparent campaign possible. That means, for instance, I'm going to probably say some things at times that get me in trouble because I'm going to be very honest and open with people, and I'm okay with that. If that means that it turns some people off and they don't want to vote for me, then I'm okay with that. This is about being open and honest and transparent. For instance, my campaign finances. I want every dollar I spend to be published on my website. I want people to know what I'm doing with that money. Not because I think that that's going to blow people's minds. I don't think anybody's even going to really care about that. But what I want to do is I'm setting that precedent now so that when I'm elected, they know Josh Parks is going to tell us about every dollar that he spends. And I'm going to tell them about every vote that I cast. I will make a video saying, here's what I voted for and here's why I voted that way, and bring them into the process as much as possible. The only way to restore trust is through transparency. And so you've got to let people in. So news media, for instance, like why do people not trust newspapers? Why do people not trust social internet news sources? It's so opaque. Why did they choose to run the stories that they run? How did those stories get selected? How do those stories get written and what goes into the research and how do they get edited? And it's the whole process is very opaque. And all you see is the product, the end product. And you go, okay, but that's a weird way to say that. Or why didn't you focus on this story? Why did you focus on that one? There's a complete lack of transparency in news media. And if they want, I think the best thing that could happen is if some news outlets decided right now to just open the whole process up and go, here's how we select stories, and here's why we decided to run this story or not run that story, and to talk about not just the news, but how they're a part of that process. And that would create, I think that would be a transformational thing in that industry for somebody to do that. I want the same thing from our politicians. Let's talk about what you're doing as a politician, why you're voting a certain way, who you're meeting with, who you're getting endorsed by, how you go after endorsements. Open up that process, be a little bit more transparent with it, and then maybe we can start to restore trust a little bit.
Yeah. When you talk about the media or the press, I don't even really see it as a press anymore. It's more of an opinion factory.
Yep.
You don't get you get people who are trying to make your mind up for you and tell you what you should be thinking, as opposed to giving you information and letting you come up with your own conclusion on it. It's not The press should be an adversary to government. They should be up government's ass, you know, finding
Hmm.
finding out things and roasting them. I live here in Los Angeles. Our government needs roasted. you know,
Yeah, sure.
I can't think of any government that needs roasted more than the government here in California or Los Angeles in particular. And we've had several council members, in jail now, indicted, leaving because they were, the Democrats talk about gerrymandering a lot, but they tried to gerrymander the whole county and divide the Latino council members tried to divide the black vote. That they don't look at that as gerrymandering. They don't see how they were doing that. They just
Mm,
it's just Republicans do this and they're trying to do this. They're all full of it and they're all out for themselves.
absolutely.
And
Yeah,
like
we're dealing with the gerrymandering issue really heavily in South Carolina right now. I don't know if you've seen
really,
that in the national news, but because of the Supreme Court decision regarding Alabama, that has had major downstream effects. And right now, they're looking to redraw all of the lines, congressional lines, for the federal House of Representatives. And so that's we right now we have one Democrat in the House from South Carolina, and he's been there forever, Jim Clyburn, and that district is the most gerrymandered thing you've ever seen in your life. It is drawn from the coast all the way up to the mid part of the state, and it captured, and the whole point was to capture all these black communities throughout the state and basically put them in one district, and that benefits the Democrats because it gives them one district, but it also creates kind of a electoral ghetto where you've got you don't have to worry about them voting in all these other districts. And so all these red districts just stay completely red. And then you've got this just one very blue district. But now they're looking at it and going, well, can we redraw all these districts in a way that breaks up that blue district and ensures a full red state? And that's what they're about to do. I mean, they're trying to ram it through right now. And the only thing worse than a two-party system is a one-party system.
yeah,
And right now, I mean, we right now, very if you think about the representation in South Carolina, I mean, do all the Democrats have one seat? Are they really represented? I don't know what percentage of the state would identify as Democrats, but I'm sure it's 30, 40%. And they have one seat. Now they're about to have zero. I'm an independent. I'm a libertarian. I've got zero seats, and we'll still have zero seats. But like I said, the only thing worse than a two-party system is a one-party system, and now we're going down to potentially completely. I mean, our state is not 100% red. A slim majority of people in South Carolina um, consider themselves Republicans. Uh,
Mm.
and and what? Now we're going to be fully represented by Republicans in the House of Representatives. It's just absurd to me, but that's what's happening right now.
Yeah, Indiana has a supermajority of Republicans. California has a supermajority of Democrats, and neither system seems to be working in that sense very well for
Yeah,
the people.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
When it comes to independent news, as you mentioned a minute ago, the we I will say I'll give a quick shout out. We have one outlet in South Carolina that seems to be truly independent. I don't always agree with everything they say, but they are not afraid to take on the government, especially in South Carolina. It's called Fitz News. And they are pretty bold in their their willingness to go hard against the government. So I appreciate that. We just need a dozen more of them. That's what we need in South Carolina. But yeah, it's the press. I think has the ability to restore trust. It's just going to have to stop acting as a political moderator and or uh, try to force political outcomes and instead see its true identity as we're here to just tell the story. And the only way to restore trust, like I said, is through transparency.
yeah. We don't need the press being a mouthpiece for the state. We saw what
Yeah,
that
exactly.
during COVID.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah, I don't want to be a mouthpiece for anything. They
right.
just tell the truth. Good, bad, and ugly, tell the truth and tell the whole truth if you can, as much of it as you can. Tell both sides, whatever you need to do, put all the facts out there, and then let us decide what we do with that information. And unfortunately, there's not many organizations. I used to be a huge NPR guy. I donated to NPR every year. I loved NPR as an NPR
I did,
junkie,
I did
but I
too.
got sick of it. It was during Trump's first term that I finally was like, I guess I'm not an NPR guy anymore because everything they posted, every story was, here's the terrible thing Trump did today. And sometimes it was legitimate complaints. Don't get me wrong, Trump, I'm not a Trump fan,
Yeah,
but sometimes I remember one story was Trump was in Japan and was with the prime minister in Japan, and he dumped a whole handful of fish food into a koi pond. And that was their story against Trump. And I was like, okay, we've lost the plot. Like this is not free press anymore. This is just attack Trump network now. And I was like, public dollars are going to this network to
yeah.
pay to attack the president over something as ridiculous as this. Don't
Fish.
get me wrong, let's attack him, but let's attack him on the right things. I mean,
Yeah.
it's so absurd to me. But anyway, yeah, I think the press has a long way to go to restoring trust, but it's not undoable.
Mhm.
It's definitely something that they could do.
Who holds the office right now that you're running for?
Heather Bauer, she's a Democrat. I live in a very purple district, so it was a Republican before her for several terms, and she ran and she beat him, unseated him. This was right after the kind of the famous abortion case that kind of overturned Roe v. Wade,
Uh,
and she kind of ran on protecting women's rights and things like that in a very purple district, and she was able to flip that seat. And he ran against her. The previous incumbent ran against her in the last election, and he lost again to her. And so she's held onto that seat now for two cycles.
uh-huh,
I don't think he's running again. I think there's going to be a different lady named Tracy Robbins, who looks like a shoo-in for the Republican nomination,
uh-huh.
and so it's going to be me versus two ladies, Heather Bauer and Tracy Robbins, who I like both of them. Like a lot of what they have to say. Like I said earlier, my biggest selling point is I don't have a machine behind me. I don't have anybody to answer to other than the constituents. They get a lot of pressure to vote certain ways because of their parties and what their parties are trying to accomplish. I won't have that. I will only be in it for the people in my district. And so that's, I think, the big difference between me and the Democrat and the Republican that are in the race.
Yeah, that and as a libertarian, we don't. You're not getting paid for this. All the stuff we do, we volunteer for it. So it's nice that I mean, you're given of your time, your reputation, everything. Because let's face it, when you get into politics, a lot of times you're smeared, and there's a lot of smears out there against us libertarians about how, oh, we want corporations to rule the world and we'd be polluting everything, and just all this nonsense that the progressives put out against us, and then you got the nonsense that the Republicans say about us about how we would let dictators be all over the earth, and we wouldn't have a strong military, and all these slurs against us that people will attack you personally with. So it takes a lot of courage to go out there and put yourself out there in a race where we're already the underdog in it, to come out and do this stuff. So I know
Yeah.
you're not here in California. I appreciate you running for office and representing freedom over there. So I hope the voters do as well.
I appreciate that. I do too. And it hasn't gotten dirty yet, but it's still early. Like I said, the primaries haven't even happened. I'm technically right now the only person on the ballot in November, until those primaries happen. So we'll see what happens after that. But I want to run a clean race. I don't plan on doing any personal attacks against my opponents. And my hope is I would love to debate them. I don't know that there's ever been a debate in this district for this seat. But I say let's maybe not even a debate. Let's have a discussion. Let's sit down and talk about the issues in front of in a way that's public and the constituents can see, and we can let them decide who to vote for. So I don't know if they would agree to that, but I'd love to put it out there and just see what we can do. I want to run, like I said, I'm going to run a different kind of race. So
Mhm.
I hope they see that and don't try to attack me or my family, but we'll
Yeah.
see what happens. They have a machine behind them. They don't have total control over what happens from that machine. So
Yeah, you're talking about like the debate and stuff. Like we just recently had the mayor debate out here, and Spencer Pratt kind of wrecked everybody.
mm,
Because he was talking about the fires and the response and the homeless and all the copper theft and everything. And so they were supposed to have another forum, like a candidate forum, not a real debate where the three candidates were supposed to go there. Well, the mayor bowed out already because she has other business. She has to go to Sacramento. She's got work to do. So
oh yeah.
so she bowed out. Now the other lady who's really just I think I think she's a democratic socialist. So she's even further left than the mayor.
Oh yeah.
So she bowed out because she said she only agreed to uh, debate or be in it with the mayor because they both got trounced by Spencer Pratt, and now they both bowed out of, and it's really funny because it's put on by the League of Women Voters, and both the women bowed out.
Oh. It's embarrassing. That's crazy.
Oh man, shit. uh,
Oh man. Yeah, I can only imagine how wild politics in LA is. I can only imagine. Yeah.
But yeah, we just yesterday we just had the mayor of Arcadia. We got her got in. She pled guilty to being what do they call it, an operative for China.
Mm.
She pleaded guilty to it.
Wow. She
Yeah,
pled guilty to this.
yeah, she pled guilty. I mean, they must have caught her red-handed because she's pleading. She's probably looking at 10 years for it. So if she would have wanted to fight, I can't imagine what they would have gone for. So California, man, we're definitely, my
That's
unfortunately
crazy.
my region here in Los Angeles is, our neighborhood council brags about being the furthest left. It's full of at best democratic socialists, mostly communists. I mean, it's terrible.
Mm.
It's terrible.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah, I mean it's a little bit opposite here, obviously in South Carolina. It's very red state, very MAGA state, and but a lot of conservatives, and it's a little bit different.
yeah,
It's the term good old boy
yeah,
system gets thrown out a lot in South Carolina. It's very much a good old boy system. I think that's changing a little bit. Um, because the demographics of South Carolina are changing. Fun fact, South Carolina is the fastest growing state in the country per capita.
Is it?
So in terms of the rate of growth
Yeah.
per capita, in terms of the number of people we have currently versus people we're adding.
Uh-huh.
So fastest growing in the country. So demographics are changing and something. So one thing I'd love to see is that good old boy system go away, but we'll see.
Yeah. Yeah, we can definitely live without that. That's for sure. There's even parts of California's got that. You look at like
Oh, sure.
San Bernardino. They it's not the most friendly part of the state. But there are conservative parts of the state. Like up by Yosemite and stuff. And
Mm,
you would look at those areas and you would never think that that was California. Trump flag
mhm.
hanging up in the yards and stuff. But as you stated, those people aren't really represented here.
No.
Because of the supermajority and gerrymandering and all that stuff. They're talking about. Actually, I had a recent podcast where we are talking about proportional representation. Like if the Libertarians win 1%, then we get 1% of the state house.
Hmm.
And those kind of things. I think that would be a little bit more reasonable. That way, you could have coalitions between libertarians and say people who are Democrats on say criminal justice reform and different things like that, like getting rid of civil asset forfeiture, and you could work with Republicans on, well, I would say spending less money, but they're spending like Democrats now, so I don't know if you
Right.
say that.
The things they say they care about.
Yeah, they said, we could work with them on being more pro-gun, teaching Republicans what being pro-gun really looks like.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah,
Yeah, no, I agree, and we're going to have to do that in South Carolina too. The only way to, and there are more libertarian and liberty friendly Republicans in office that we can find, and to be honest, I mean they're Democrats we can have coalitions with. I mean on medical freedom, things like uh, medical marijuana would be a potential coalition issue for us in South Carolina, getting that passed. And I would imagine that would come mostly from Democrats, not as much from the Republicans, although it's increasingly becoming a bipartisan issue. So we'll see.
yeah.
Yeah, there's opportunities for some of that coalition stuff
So
that I'm excited about.
yeah, so you guys don't have medical marijuana there yet?
We don't, not at all. No,
Yeah, yeah.
we've
Same,
got
same,
nothing.
same in my home state, Indiana. they're just they're dragging their feet on it. And Michigan actually, as far as I know, has great. They don't overtax it. It's not like Illinois. California thoroughly overtaxes. So I would suggest people in South Carolina, look into how Michigan has done it with the lower taxes and stuff. And it's not. I think a lot of people have that fear that, it's just going to turn into Portland if we as libertarians we want to legalize drugs. Just like alcohol is legal, but if I get drunk and I go out and act like a lunatic in the streets, I'm going to get busted for that. And that's where people who think legalization is going to lead to that. No, there's still laws about how you behave in public and if you're doing damage. But like here in Los Angeles, people will be all tore up on drugs. Like there's people running around naked on the streets. One of my little students said, "Oh, we were at Rite Aid yesterday, and there's a naked guy in the parking lot." And it's just normal for kids to see that kind of stuff now. That's just not right. And
No.
those kind of people should be, thrown in jail for that. If that's the kind of behavior that, it's not the drug, it's the behavior that, because some people can take drugs and do just fine. It's like some people can drink and do just fine, and some people can't have a drink.
Well, I mean, in the comparison as that you mentioned, drinking is the perfect one because we already treat alcohol that way. I mean, we have certain regulations around it, certainly, and sometimes too many, but we don't criminalize it.
Right.
We learned the hard way what that looks like,
Yep.
and so we've legalized it. We allow people to consume it. Even to consume it publicly, but we do have limitations on their behavior. You can't
Yeah.
get behind the wheel of a car after consuming a lot of it, and those regulations are good. We should have those common sense uh, limitations on what you can do behaviorally, but consuming the substance isn't the issue. It's
No.
what you do with it. And so, yeah, absolutely, those things. But most of those things are already criminalized, like you said. I mean,
Yeah.
driving under the influence, we don't need a new law for that. That's
No.
already on the books. You can't be violent. Not that THC makes you violent anyway, but you can't get on it and be violent towards people. Oh yeah, cool. Violence is already against the law, so we don't have to worry about that, you know. So I agree. There's not a lot of there's a lot of reasons to pass medical marijuana. But here's the crazy thing is in South Carolina, and I've heard a lot of complaints about this recently. Is they're already, I mean, it's not decriminalized, but it might as well. I mean, you smell it everywhere. People are smoking it anyway. It's not the most pleasant smell for a lot of people. They don't love that, but it's just not something that the police want to spend a lot of their time on is regulating a plant. And so focus on the behaviors, focus on the on you know the things that actually hurt people,
Mhm.
and let's get away from focusing on whether they own or consume a plant. It's just not helpful.
No, not the slightest bit.
Yeah.
I agree with it thoroughly, sir.
Yeah, and I strongly believe that there are lots of things that people want to do that I don't want to do,
Yeah.
and would maybe even find for me morally are not things that I want to invest my time and energy in or should be that are wrong for me to do. But if they don't hurt another person, then my philosophy is as long as they're not hurting somebody else or taking their stuff, hurting their property, then they should be allowed to do that. I'm a Christian, but I don't believe in legislating that morality. Um, Common sense morality, like don't hurt people, take this stuff. Absolutely, we should all agree on that, whether no matter you're religious or not. But I don't need everybody to conform to kind of my moral framework. I That's my moral framework. I have to conform to that
Yeah.
and try to, but I'm not here to judge other people as long as they're not hurting anybody.
Yeah, and that to me that's a great thing about libertarianism. It doesn't pick those kind of things because I'm an atheist, but I really feel that there is room, and not just room. I think there's a necessity for religious groups to be involved in their communities. I use it as an
Yes.
example on the podcast occasionally. There was a mega church in Indiana that this is a few years back, but they paid off an entire hospital's bills. And not just for their paid, for the people that go to the church, they paid everybody's thing. And I thought,
Mm,
that to me is that's what Jesus would have wanted. If as I see it, from the outside of the church, that's the kind of things that when I think of Christianity, those are the kind of things that are the good things that they bring to the community, or whether it be another religion. I do see the community that churches have. They have things to help out the homeless or the poor, and I think more atheists should learn from that, and have community centers and stuff built up to help out communities. I think the religious communities are really a backbone of what civil society is. That's just a fact.
yes, absolutely. Yeah, I'm glad you said that. I think that is the heart of Christianity, and it's when Christians are at their best, is when they're serving their communities.
Mhm.
That's Jesus would agree with that. Absolutely, you're right, Sean. And the Bible says that looking after the widows and the orphans, that's the true heart of religion. And so that's where churches should focus their energies, is on serving others. And by the way, I'm glad I agree with you. I believe the Libertarian Party has a place for the religious and the non-religious. And we have a caucus, the Christian Caucus, that's actually founded by someone in California, Kara Smith. Shout out to her for founding that caucus, and we've and it's a great place of I think like-minded libertarian Christians who want to see the party thrive, but also want to promote our values and what that looks like from with our own kind of Christian spin on it for sure, but so much that we agree on with people of other faiths and people who have no faith. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So, can you think of anything else you'd like to, before we wrap up here, that you'd like to let the voters there in South Carolina know about that I didn't ask about?
Let me see that. No, no, I think that's it. I've talked a lot, Sean, so I appreciate the opportunity to
Yeah,
be
my
here.
pleasure.
Yeah, I love South Carolina. It's the reason I'm running for office. I quoted Jason Isbell. I don't know if you're a fan of Jason Isbell, but I quoted him in my announcement to run for office. He has a song called Palmetto Rose, said in that has a line that says, "Lord, let me die in the iodine state," which is an old name for South Carolina. And that's how I feel. Lord, let me die in the iodine state. I've lived here almost my whole life. I was born in Tennessee, but I've lived in South Carolina since I was a year old. I plan to die here, and so I love this state, and that's why I'm doing what I'm doing.
Yeah, that's great. So you said the social media stuff's not all together. Do you have any personal stuff that people can follow you?
Yeah, yeah. You can if you want to follow me personally, you can follow me at facebook.com/, Josh Parks. I will have my social media shared really soon. You can actually probably already find my Facebook page. It's Josh Parks for State House. Is already up. There's no content there yet, but it will be up and running very shortly. We'll have an Instagram page up soon as well. And the website is not up and running yet, but it's going to be Parks for Parks for SC.com.
Letter, letter.
Parks, FORSC is in South Carolina, .com,
All right.
is going to be Parks for SC. And that's going to be, yeah, that'll be the website. So we're working on getting all that up and running. And if this is all new for me, and I'm putting my team together, and we're making it happen. So,
Sounds
uh,
good.
yeah, thank
And
you
just,
for having me, Sean. I really appreciate being here.
yeah, my pleasure. And you mentioned 11 other people running for office there in South Carolina. Said the podcast is open for you guys too. If you want to be on the show, hit us up. I love talking to candidates. I love getting people fired up and giving you some media. A lot of people who run for office, I'm their first interview. Because I'm
Mhm.
always reaching out to people. I want to spread this message of liberty.
Mhm.
I love talking about liberty. I love the music I play is about liberty. Everything I do is about being free. And I'm always happy to talk to free people.
Thank you. Yes. And I love that you're doing that you're talking to candidates like me who this may be their first race and they may be new to this. We need that kind of exposure in the practice, talking to people like you. So thank you for doing that. And I will pass that along to others in the SCLP, and if give them your info. Thank you for that.
Yep, sounds good. Well, like I said, I appreciate you running for office. Appreciate you coming on here and talking to us. And as it gets closer to the election, maybe we'll get you back on. Later on after the summer, and see how things are heading out up there, and see if we can get you a push towards getting some more votes.
I appreciate that. Thank you, Sean.
Yep. All right. And thanks to everybody for listening to Liberty Blues today. Share it with your friends, leave a comment, all that good stuff. Check out my latest album, Free People, wherever you stream music. You can hear the podcast if you just look up Sean Osborne on YouTube. The handle is also at Mad Sean Osborne. I think you can find it that way. That'll also lead you to my music there. And my handle on X is at Mad Sean Osborne. On Facebook, I have the Liberty Blues Network, and my music page is This Might Make You Mad. So, if you like libertarian themed music, it's a lot of fun to play at your Liberty events. I would love it if you listen to it. And Indie-tarian, they have a nice playlist on Spotify full of libertarian musicians. I'd like everybody to go out and help out with the algorithms and give it a play or two if you're on Spotify. And we'll see you on the next episode of the Liberty Blues. Let me turn off this recording real quick.
You're good. Yeah.